Imagine a continent brimming with sunshine, wind, rivers, and vast deposits of natural resources like uranium. Yet hundreds of millions of its people live in darkness. How can a continent with such an abundance of natural resources struggle to provide something as basic as electricity? Over 600 million people across Africa lack access to reliable electricity. But by 2030, this could change dramatically. Today, we're exploring how the most ambitious energy initiative Africa has ever seen, Mission 300, will transform the lives of 300 million Africans forever. This isn't just about power lines and light bulbs. It's about unlocking Africa's full potential and building the future it deserves. Can you imagine living without electricity? No lights to study by, no power for hospitals, no energy for industries or to charge a phone? For millions of Africans, that's daily life. And while the rest of the world takes electricity for granted, Africa still lags behind. But why? Why in a continent as sunny as Africa is solar power not more widespread? Why is energy poverty still so pervasive when Africa's potential for hydro, solar, wind, and even nuclear energy is nearly unlimited? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves as we look ahead to 2030. Let's put things in perspective. Sub-Saharan Africa accounts for nearly 83% of the world's unelectrified population. That means that countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, where over 70 million people live without electricity, or Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, where around 40% of the population lacks reliable power, are emblematic of a continent-wide crisis. This lack of energy has far-reaching consequences that go beyond simple inconvenience. Electricity is the backbone of modern society. Without it, healthcare systems falter, education is compromised, businesses are crippled, and economic growth is stalled. Think about hospitals. Many in Africa rely on generators to power critical equipment, but what happens when there's no fuel for those generators? In remote areas, clinics often operate with little to no power, making it impossible to store vaccines, run basic diagnostic equipment, or even keep lights on during surgeries. The energy gap isn't just about lights, it's about life and death. In education, the lack of electricity means that children often study by candlelight or under dim, dangerous kerosene lamps. It's a cruel irony that in the digital age, millions of African students are cut off from the wealth of knowledge the internet offers, simply because they have no way to power a device to access it. The future of Africa rests on the ability of its youth to learn, innovate, and thrive. But without electricity, how can they? Before we continue, just a gentle reminder to like and share our videos. Also, subscribe to the channel to stay informed on the latest African economic, political, and social developments, and explore how global geopolitics impact the continent. Now let's continue. Here's where things get even more troubling. Africa has no shortage of resources to generate electricity. The Sahara Desert alone could provide enough solar energy to power the entire world, let alone the continent. The Congo River could meet the energy needs of all sub-Saharan Africa through hydroelectric power. And Africa is rich in uranium, a key resource for nuclear energy. So why does this vast potential remain untapped? The reasons are multifaceted. For one, Africa has long been stuck in a cycle of underdevelopment, largely driven by neo-colonial structures that continue to extract resources without reinvesting in the continent's infrastructure. Many African nations are forced to export their raw materials, such as oil and uranium, rather than utilizing them for domestic energy production. Meanwhile, global financial institutions and energy conglomerates have historically prioritized profits over people, resulting in energy policies that do little to benefit the average African citizen. There's also the issue of governance. African governments, many of which are cash-strapped and mired in debt, often lack the resources to invest in large-scale energy projects. Power utilities are frequently mismanaged and fail to attract the necessary private sector investment needed to scale up electrification efforts. In fact, 57% of utilities in sub-Saharan Africa can't even cover their operating costs, making it nearly impossible to expand access to electricity. Enter Mission 300, an ambitious initiative launched by the World Bank and African Development Bank, AFDB. to electrify the lives of 300 million Africans by 2030. With the support of global organizations like the Rockefeller Foundation, the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, and private investors, Mission 300 is poised to change the game. This initiative is more than just an energy project. It's a lifeline for millions of people across the continent. By 2030, Mission 300 aims to cut Africa's energy poverty in half, bringing light to schools, hospitals, businesses, and homes. The initiative focuses heavily on renewable energy, with plans to deploy solar-powered mini-grids and standalone systems, especially in remote and rural areas. This is key because traditional grid infrastructure is often expensive and difficult to extend to remote regions. Solar mini-grids and decentralized energy systems offer a more flexible and sustainable solution that can be implemented quickly and efficiently. Take the Ascent program, for example. Set to bring power to 100 million people across 20 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa, this initiative is already gaining momentum. In Nigeria, the DARES project aims to reach 17.5 million people by replacing costly diesel generators with renewable energy. Meanwhile, the Regional Emergency Solar Power Intervention Project, RESPITE, which targets Chad, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Togo, is another effort aimed at using solar power to alleviate energy poverty. The relationship between electricity and economic growth cannot be overstated. Electricity is the bedrock of all development. Without it, industrialization is impossible, job creation stalls, and poverty persists. Countries with abundant energy resources like South Africa or Egypt have made significant strides in economic development because they can power their industries, their factories, and their tech sectors. Now, imagine if the entire continent had the electricity it needed. What would that mean for Africa's future? For one, it would mean jobs, lots of them. By 2030, it's estimated that electrifying Africa could create up to 150 million new jobs across sectors such as manufacturing, agriculture, and services. Reliable energy access would also mean improved productivity for small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, which are the backbone of many African economies. More power means more businesses can stay open longer, produce more goods, and hire more workers. Electricity is also key to innovation. Africa is home to some of the most exciting tech hubs in the world, from Nairobi's Silicon Savannah to Lagos's burgeoning fintech scene. But these industries require reliable electricity to thrive. Imagine what African innovators could achieve if they had consistent, affordable access to power. The possibilities are endless. There are already several large-scale projects underway aimed at addressing Africa's energy needs. Egypt, for instance, is constructing its first nuclear power plant, the El Dabaa nuclear plant, which will generate 4.8 gigawatts of electricity. Ethiopia is working on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which will produce over 6,000 megawatts, making it the largest hydropower project in Africa. And let's not forget Kenya, which is leading the way in geothermal energy production, generating over 700 megawatts of clean energy from its geothermal plants. The Sahel states are also making significant strides. The Alliance of Sahel States, AES, has ambitious plans for nuclear energy, and with international support, they could soon become key players in Africa's energy revolution. Countries like Mauritania are pushing forward with renewable energy projects as well, with the goal of increasing national electricity access to 70%. These projects are just the beginning. As Mission 300 gains traction, we can expect to see even more groundbreaking initiatives that leverage Africa's natural resources to bring power to the people. Now, let's take a step back and compare Africa's energy situation to the rest of the world. In Europe, nearly 100% of the population has access to electricity. In North America, it's the same story. Even in Southeast Asia, a region once grappling with severe energy shortages, over 90% of people now have access to power. But in sub-Saharan Africa, only 43% of the population can say the same. This disparity is a glaring example of global inequality. How can a continent as rich in resources as Africa still struggle to provide its people with such a basic necessity? Is this a result of historical exploitation and ongoing neocolonialism? Or is it a failure of governance and infrastructure? These are questions we must continue to ask if we are to achieve true global equity. As the world moves towards cleaner, more sustainable energy sources, Africa has a unique opportunity to leapfrog traditional fossil fuel-based energy systems and build a renewable energy future from the ground up. Solar energy, in particular, holds enormous potential for Africa. The continent receives more sunlight than any other region on Earth, yet it produces less than 1% of the world's solar energy. Projects like Morocco's Noor Solar Complex, one of the largest solar farms in the world, demonstrate what's possible when African nations harness the power of the sun. Similarly, Kenya's Olkaria geothermal plant has become a global model for clean energy development, providing reliable electricity to millions of people. As more African nations invest in renewables, the continent can position itself as a leader in the global clean energy revolution. Organizations like the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet are playing a critical role in making Africa's energy future a reality. Through initiatives like Mission 300, these organizations are not only providing financial support, but also technical expertise and policy guidance to ensure that projects are successful and sustainable. But international support isn't enough. African governments must also step up to create the policy environments necessary to attract private sector investment. Tariff reforms, improved utility management, and streamlined regulations are essential to ensuring that the private sector plays its part in Africa's electrification. By 2030, Africa could look vastly different. Imagine a continent where every child has access to a well-lit classroom, where hospitals run 24/7 without fear of blackouts, where businesses of all sizes can operate at full capacity, and where innovation flourishes in every corner of the continent. This is the Africa that Mission 300 envisions, a continent fully powered, fully connected, and fully capable of realizing its immense potential. This isn't just a dream, it's a real possibility. But it will take collective action from governments, international organizations, the private sector, and most importantly, the people of Africa. Everyone has a role to play in this energy revolution. So, what's next? The path to electrifying Africa is clear, but it won't be easy. It will require billions of dollars in investment, sweeping policy reforms, and unprecedented levels of collaboration between African nations and the global community. But the payoff is enormous. Electrifying 300 million lives by 2030 could be the single most transformative development initiative in African history. What do you think? Is the electrification of Africa achievable by 2030, or are there still too many obstacles in the way? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, Africa's energy future is bright, but only if we make it so. Thank you for watching. If you believe in Africa's potential and want to see a future where no one is left in the dark, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content on Africa's path to development. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and letting me break down these complex geopolitical topics. Let me know what you think about the issues down in the comments below. Looking forward to that discussion. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to our channel, and we will see you in our next video.